What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. All right, moving on to Heat Celtics. Really nice response from the Celtics after their ugly loss in Game 2, especially on the defensive end. Like Game 2, I did a whole film session on it. Those of you guys who follow the show, that was one of the worst defensive performances from a serious championship contender I've seen in a long time. But in the last 3 games, big response defensively, a 93.4 defensive rating in the last 3 games. Outscored the Heat by 21 points per 100 possessions in the last 3 games. Just complete dominance. Tonight, heavy dose of Jaylen Brown to start the game, attacking in the post. Started the game with that little patented lefty hook in the lane that he's been killing people with. Drawing double teams, making good reads out of it. Really was the focal point of the offense early on. He had 8 points and an assist in his first shift. Derek White was hot again to start the game, just like he was last game. Hit 3 threes in the first quarter. Then after Brown left the floor, they started running through Tatum. And Tatum has had a little bit of a funky series as usage was way down. He had a 25.3% usage percentage in this series. Big part of that was him just getting the Bam Adebayo matchup. And I kind of wanted to see them attack Bam more simply because I think Tatum could use the reps. It's a kind of a similar type of physical profile to what he might see in the NBA Finals if he sees a good dose of Aaron Gordon on the ball. And we'll see how the Nuggets match up if those two teams do end up meeting each other. But one of the things that was interesting is in that tail first quarter stretch and going into the second quarter, he started going to work on Bam and they started running through Tatum. And he actually got free for a pull-up 3 at the top of the key because he ran Bam through a screen. Again, bigger players can struggle to navigate screens. We saw that with Aaron Gordon, by the way, on LeBron. It's a big part of what made that LeBron AD pick and roll so deadly in the Denver series is Aaron just kept getting caught on the screen, so LeBron was able to get downhill. And bigger players, they tend to be easier to screen and higher centers of gravity, and they're a little bit challenged when it comes to the screen navigation, right? And a lot of Miami Heat possessions there ended in switches and like Tatum attacking out of the triple threat, like against Haywood Highsmith and just him being aggressive, driving to the basket. Really liked his shift there in that late first, early second. And Boston was up 30 after 16 minutes of basketball in this game. This thing was over. So, I mean, it's hard to learn too much about Boston in a series like this. It's one of the largest talent differentials I've seen in a series in a long time. But there have been a lot of encouraging signs, like the defensive response after Game 2. I thought that was big time. Again, like to sit in the room and be like, hey, man, this isn't going to be good enough. We have to sharpen up, regardless of who you're playing. To hold a team under 100 points per 100 possessions for three games in a row like that, super impressive. They absolutely barbecued the zone. I talked before the series about how I wanted to see Boston kind of like handle some of Spoelstra's gimmicks well. Last year in the postseason, Eric Spoelstra ran the zone 115 times against Boston and held them below a point per possession. This year, he only ran it 28 times because the Celtics shot 79% in effective field goal percentage against it and scored 1.54 points per possession. So they took what was a weakness last year, their inability to solve that Spoelstra zone, and turned it into a legitimate strength and played them out of it. Now, obviously, different personnel than the Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Jimmy Butler type of groups you were seeing last year. But still, zone defense in particular, especially with how well run it is in Miami, I still find that to be impressive, even if the defensive personnel isn't as good. They also rebounded extremely well. They had a 56% rebound percentage in the series, which is awesome. We talked about Tatum. He led the regular season in usage for Boston at 29.6. He was at 25.3 in the series. The reality is Jaylen Brown and Derek White just had better matchups, so I totally get it. And he devoted his energy towards rebounding. Jayson Tatum had 51 defensive rebounds in the first round. Only Anthony Davis and Nikola Jokic had more defensive rebounds in that first round. And then Sam Hauser really impressed me in this series. Shot 48% from 3 on 5 attempts per game, was a huge part of them busting Miami's zone. Really starting to show more confidence too in terms of like slightly contested shots and like movement-based jump shots too, which I think is going to be an upside for him in the long run as well. And then he competes and does his job on defense. Just a really useful role player. Now, obviously, Boston's looking at a much bigger challenge in the next round. I actually think Orlando is more capable of giving them issues. I still lean slightly towards Cleveland winning the series just because they're a little bit more experienced and they'll have Game 7 at home. So Orlando has to, I think Orlando will beat them in Game 6, but Game 7 is just, it's a veteran team at home. it's going to be a tough one for Orlando. Like Donovan Mitchell has way more playoff experience than Paolo and Franz, right? They've got Marcus Morris, they've got Tristan Thompson. Like when you go to Orlando, it's basically, Joe Ingles and then a bunch of young, really young players. And so it's hard for me to bet on Orlando, but should Orlando get out of that series, they're the team that I actually think has some potential to give Boston some issues. To be clear, I think Boston would kill both of these teams. I think they destroy Cleveland. I think they would embarrass Cleveland. But Orlando is huge and athletic, and they play super hard, and they're really, really good at home. So I think that could that's what I'm going to be rooting for, just for a more interesting series. And honestly, I think it would benefit Boston to play some more intense basketball games. Like, all of their peers right now are playing like intense, must-win, competitive basketball games like every single night, and Boston's been chilling, for lack of a better term, right? And so I think facing Orlando would actually be beneficial for them to kind of face a legitimate physical challenge to kind of get them ready for the conference finals so that they're a little more primed up when they get there. On the Heat front, I don't have much to say other than this. Enough of this. Make some sort of aggressive move to bring in more firepower. I'm sick of talking about how good of a coach Erik Spoelstra is while he's out there trying to make things work with a bunch of undrafted guys and a bunch of cast-offs from other franchises. I'm a big believer in Heat culture. I believe in Erik Spoelstra's abilities. I believe in their standards and expectations as a franchise. But at the end of the day, like, it only works against teams that are fraudulent. Every time they run into a legitimate championship contender, even with Jimmy and Bam, they just don't have enough. And it'll be a damn shame if they finally do bring in some sort of real firepower and it's too late because Jimmy's too old. The window is now. It has to happen this summer. Someone will be available, and they cannot get cheap. And no, I don't think Tyler Herro is good enough. Even with some of the flashes that he showed in this series, I don't think he's good enough to be untouchable in these discussions. You have to have a bona fide star-level shot creator in the backcourt so that you can go into a series and say, I've got 3 players that are top 25 in the NBA that I'm giving Erik Spoelstra so that he has a legitimate set of tools to use in this type of environment. They need to get aggressive. They need to make something happen this offseason. No more of this, let's see if our culture and coaching and moxie and confidence and Jimmy Butler's alpha dog mentality can pull us through a playoff run. That can't be the case anymore.